Hello, hello. This is Megan with Megan Thompson Coaching, and I'm here with a very special guest today. We're going to talk all about what to do when you feel like you shouldn't have had kids in the first place. Now, this is incredibly controversial. Parenting a highly sensitive child is very hard as well. And so we're not here to sugarcoat things at MTC. We're going to talk all about that worry, that biggest automatic thought that just eats away at you at night today. And so be prepared to understand, but also move forward from how to deal with the side effect of the meltdown cycle. Here at MTC, we help parents break out of the meltdown cycle. This means that you are dealing with daily meltdowns, multiple times a week meltdowns, even multiple times a day, where your child is losing their mind. They might be out of control in their bodies, in their words, throwing, kicking, hitting, saying things like they wish that they weren't alive or that life would be better off without them, even going so far as saying that you hate them, or that they don't think that you love them, or that they don't love you. And this is devastating to hear as a parent, especially if you're focused on eliminating this meltdown cycle and you've tried all the things to break out of that pattern. It can feel incredibly tiring. And so today we're going to talk about where you could be stuck in this pattern if this is the experience that you're having. Now, it's very true that you could also be parenting a sensitive teen. If your sensitive teen is completely shut down and not able to share with you why they are isolating, holding up in their room, and just unable to access support from you or share with you that they want to feel better. And so we're going to be covering this too, because that's the refusal isolation cycle that's typically more relevant for sensitive teenagers. And it's also true that we see this with sensitive children. I like to affectionately call them icicle children, children who just go into themselves and they are frozen like icicles. So we think about that de-thawing process and being able to break out of this pattern. There's a lot of factors that are taken into account in breaking out of this meltdown cycle. And today we're going to talk about your own experience as a parent in that and what you can do to turn this around. And so when we think about noticing the incredible component of you as a parent and how you can be influencing your highly sensitive child, I have our very special guest here today, Nicolo. This is Dr. Nicolo Bernardi. He has his PhD in neuroscience. He's been working with us for quite some time now as our team mindset coach. And so, Nicolo, welcome.
Hello, Megan. Thank you so much.
Yes, so happy to have you today and share your knowledge with our audience. And so I would love to be able to talk about the deep experience that parents can be struggling with in dealing with this meltdown cycle, right? So share with me some of your observations when we see parents when they first start to work with us and being able to communicate their needs and what they want to be able to achieve out of this, breaking out of this meltdown cycle.
Totally. So linked to the theme of today, the theme is, wow, sometimes I feel that I maybe didn't want to be a parent, don't want to be a parent anymore. And that it's something really painful to realize. And when we look at this, in the beginning of the journey in the course, we realized that there are actually a number of components to that. And so one experience that builds into that feeds into that is when we don't want to be around our kids, as just counterintuitive and painful is to feel that is something that comes up quite often early on. I know I should be down there playing with them. I know that I should be having fun, but I gotta tell you the truth, that's not where I want to be. I'd rather be somewhere else. And then with that, the experience of pain and shame that come from just having that feeling. So that's one common thing that we hear at the beginning, and that becomes then the object of closer mindset work. And another one very related is not only I don't want to be around them, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like I can have any time for myself.
Right.
My day feels like it's just a constant, trying to recuperate from the previous meltdown, get all those laundry and meals done, and it takes forever to get to sleep, or sleep, and then next day on. And so there's this experience of I can't get to recharge, which further feeds into the, what, I'd rather not do this. I'd rather just not be a parent anymore.
Right.
And how, increasingly devastating and disturbing is that realization that we need time for ourselves to recharge, but it doesn't seem to happen anytime.
Yes, and one of the patterns that you're pointing out, Nicolo, which I think is so important to understand, is the symptom of walking on eggshells, right? Because when parents notice that their kid is in the middle of a meltdown or about to start a meltdown, or you're just trying to avoid the meltdown in the first place, the very second that your child is relaxed, happy, and playful, that is the very second that you get to check in with yourself. Right. And so it can be very sad as a parent to experience this moment when your child is happy and want to retreat. Right. And that's a side effect of the experience of this meltdown cycle, walking on eggshells and constantly being hypervigilant and constantly trying to stay out of danger and literally negotiating with a bomb expert or treating your child like a ticking time bomb is the experience of many of the parents that we work with, right? And just that constant tension you're carrying in your body, of course you're going to want to go down and lay down and check your screen, right? Or just completely check out, or only focus on the to-do list, because then you feel productive for the day. And that whole component of being able to observe that this isn't the way that you wanted to parent, or that this isn't the way that you thought parenting would be, is incredibly important to address when we're breaking out of that meltdown cycle, right? Can't just teach your kids skills if we're not addressing this avoidance because of how long we've been dealing with this pain.
Yeah, and as the clients work with trying to address this before they join into bootcamp, there is another snag there, another trouble that they often run into, that is, it's hard to be on the same page between the two parents. And what used to be a relationship that actually was flowing really beautifully and positively between the two adults, now all of a sudden becomes so fractured and full of opportunities for little conflicts and disagreement and misunderstandings. And that is because, there isn't an understanding of what is really going on, and everybody, the two parents, is trying to understand it from their lenses. And usually this ends up kind of split into polarities when one person is doing we should get this under control now, we should get tough, we should all of that. And the other person is, well, I don't know, we should perhaps just prevent things from happening and go with the flow. And the relationship between the two adults, who are the two people that hold the solution, becomes actually additional source of the problem, which contributes to, what I preferred when we didn't have this kid and we were just getting along, why it is so hard to get along now.
Yeah. And to speak of that and to your spouse or co-parent has got to be incredibly difficult, right? And so when we hear parents deal with this fear or express that regret, it can be easy for the other parent to swoop in and justify that everything's actually going to be okay, right? And that can actually feel incredibly isolating for the parent who feels this level of regret, because it's not going to be okay if you don't make significant changes, right? And so when one spouse is just trying to make you feel better and take away your pain, it actually feels incredibly invalidating. And so when we think about what parents do to try to turn this around, right? Like, what are they doing? They're sitting on Google trying to break out of this pattern, right? Spending late nights up, just trying to to change the experience. Monday morning quarterbacking the last meltdown. What could I have done differently? Or actually, I can't believe you said that to your kid, which can be how the conversation starts if we're walking on eggs all day, right? Just irritable and not our best selves. And this drives a further wedge, because you know that, especially in 2-parent households, though we work with plenty of single parents, those circumstances of shared responsibility aren't necessarily communicated very effectively when you're under grand stress.
Under
right?
stress, yeah, totally.
And,
Yeah. And so some of the attempts at solving the problems that we see that come out of that kind of Google-based attempt at working on this is the focus on symptoms. And so what we see is that there is a lot of trying to eliminate the problems, but the problem is understood in terms of its more visible and immediately disturbing symptom. And there isn't an appreciation of the deeper dynamics and causes. And what it's crazy about that is that when we focus on symptoms, say, for example, stop the yelling. Kid is using yelling a lot, and we need to have them stop yelling. It's crazy because everything we try and do paradoxically creates a situation where the cause of the yelling doesn't get addressed and it's exacerbated, right? It's kind of, I don't know, trying to heat a room by adding more heating, but there is a open window, but we don't know that the window is open. And so we're adding more and more heat. And so we are spending a lot of money and the room doesn't get warmer.
No.
But we just kind of try and make it more and more heat. And we see the bill growing up and it doesn't solve the problem.
Exactly. So when we're looking at the problem, it's something that Autumn on our team often says to parents: the problem is not the problem, right? on our meetings, and when we look at the deeper issues and why it's so incredibly important to address your own mindset as a parent of a highly sensitive child, and how you see your kid, how you see yourself, how you respond to your kid, how much you take things personally in any dynamic in the family interactions, is incredibly important, because you need to be able to see that your child is capable. And if you're stuck in feeling hurt by your child's actions, then it would be very tough, right? For our clients, we talk about this a lot with our clients, to see our kid as to see their kid as well-meaning, right? As trying, as, in those moments, right? Because obviously the parents listening into our show or watching the show, wherever they're catching it, they're not doing that because they don't like their kids in the sense that they think their kids are evil, right? They're doing this because they're fried. They're trying to get out of this cycle. And of course you love your children. You wouldn't, if you didn't love your children, you have ill intentions toward your children, you wouldn't be watching what we have to say and listening to us or following us, right? And so of course, that experience of responding like your kid's doing this on purpose can really drive a pretty big wedge between you and your child in that relationship, right? And so when we think about the exhaustion, I'd love for us to talk about some of the changes that parents need to be able to focus on in order to break out of that pattern of exhaustion. What needs to come first, right? We speak a lot about that. As parents, we go first.
Yeah, and that exhaustion often comes by not knowing how to work for the parent with the emotions that are involved in parenting, especially parenting a highly sensitive child, which is a little different than parenting the average 80% of the population, Joe. And so 2 examples of sources of exhaustion here. One is the shutting down all the emotions is one of the things that sometimes people resort as a strategy in terms of, so you know what, I can handle this in any other way than just not feeling anymore my feelings. And here's the thing, it takes a lot of energy to shut all of that down. It takes a lot of covering up and trying to compartmentalize. It's exhausting. So that's one of the sources of the exhaustion. Another source of the exhaustion is for the people who have a very different strategy than shutting down. It's rather indulging in negative spirals, whether it's regret, worry, or anger, usually one
Mhm.
of these three. That is the other way. I'm not shutting down. I'm going all in, and I'm just
Yeah.
gonna ride the loop,
Spin.
spin. And
Yeah.
that again takes a big toll and leaves you really tired.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so when we mentioned that, just trying to run through your day of what you could have done differently, or what if this happens tomorrow, what am I going to do? And
Mm,
all of that, that takes an incredible amount of energy in that moment, as Nicolo just said. And in addition to that, it takes an incredible amount of energy to break out of that pattern, because it is such an
mm,
automatic pattern to
mm.
feel like you are solving the problem by trying to run through potential problems. And that is something we teach our clients not to do, and how to avoid that, right? Um, because your relationship with how much you beat yourself up through this whole process, your relationship with yourself is incredibly important to address when you're breaking out of this meltdown cycle. You won't be able to move forward if you're stuck in shame yourself, right? Shame keeps you stuck. And being able to move out of that experience of shame is a life skill that every human needs, and especially highly sensitive kids. And as parents, you need to be able to do that yourself. And so when we think about how, right, the focus is on a simple strategy, because this is already very complicated. We're already talking about being able to stop the complication, right? To stop the overcomplication that parents can get stuck in. Um, and part of it is noticing this is a very complicated problem, but we can slow down the solution enough to make it simple, not easy, but simple to break out of, by focusing on pillars of change for families. And so before we get into that kind of specifics, Nicola, I just wanted to check with you if there's any more for us to cover related to where parents feel stuck, what parents are working on, to try to get out of this, things that people miss often, and what they share with you that's been the most frustrating part of their journey, prior
Mhm.
to trying to solve this with us, and actually solving it with us.
Right. And so, well, one first thing to mention is that the shame spiral that you were describing
Mhm.
is playing out in the parents, and often that is not fully recognized as something that is actually happening and that is
Mhm.
contributing to the problem. And so part of the work is, wow, beginning to recognize there is a lot going on in me as a parent
Mhm.
that is affecting what is happening in the relationship with the child. And this is the beauty of this work. Once we recognize that and we learn how to turn it around, everything else begins to actually turn around surprisingly fast.
Mhm.
It's kind of mind blowing to me how entrenched are the challenging situation that we face when we see clients at the beginning,
Yeah.
and then how, relatively speaking, with respect to the years of trying, but
Right.
trying addressing the symptom, how quickly once we start to address the cause, the situation start to unravel. And so the
Mhm.
kind of that sense of exhaustion and shame is often a very powerful entry point for the work, and one that most people at the beginning say, "What?
Mhm.
I thought we were going to help Joe stop yelling."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
uh, yeah, it takes a different mindset, a different understanding of what is going on, one that is based
Mhm.
on deep causes and not
Mhm.
symptoms.
Mhm. Yes, exactly. Right. Because if we're just focused on the symptoms, then then what we're doing is we're staying in the symptoms. When you think about a situation, an injury that requires surgery, which is basically where what we do here at MTC with the families, what we're doing is being able to observe um, pretty significant issues in the family dynamic, and strategically, surgically addressing them. Right, without treating people like they're broken, without treating people like they're fragile. And many parents will come to us with strategies that they've tried before that were basically just putting band-aids on giant wounds. And those experiences have left them feeling tired, fried, um, and exhausted. And so when we look at the cause of the bleeding, right, we look at the cause of the issue, that open window, right? That's letting all the heat out of the room, and you shut the window, then lickety split, that house gets so much warmer, right?
Mhm.
And so the transformation for some people might feel like it could be too good to be true. Like, if a typical therapy journey is an average a year plus, then how does MTC do it in 8 weeks, right? And how does the strategy work in 8 weeks? And the objective out of this pattern is in focusing on those principles that as parents, you got to go first. You got to break out of that pattern because you're the one that's keeping the window open, right?
Yeah. I was just earlier today with a client and celebrating the end of their journey, and I just captured a few words because they speak about what you're talking today.
Yeah.
These are the words of this person. We were sinking, and now it feels like we have a boat, and we are seeing a lot of resilience and the ability to paddle, Beautiful. To learn and move forward.
Yeah, that's it.
Oof.
Right. You're plugging holes. I'm not even on the boat sometimes. Now you have a boat. And so, parents, you're, as a parent of a highly sensitive child, you're very capable. And without the right skills or without a boat, you're going to sink. Of course. All right. So then we focus on the correct strategy. What works, right? There needs to be 5 simple things that a parent of a highly sensitive child stuck in the meltdown cycle needs to focus on, right? First and foremost, we've just spent today focused on the majority of that, right? Which is how you are keeping the pattern spinning, how you are keeping that cycle continuously happening. Are you literally looking straight at the window and saying, nope, irrelevant. I want this breeze and I want the heat to be in my house with that too. That doesn't fit. And then, how you think about your child's needs and how you respond to yourself. And that's incredibly important. It's something that you can break out of. So really significant ineffective patterns. It doesn't need to take years and years of therapy, doesn't need to take years and years of personal development work through books and journaling, or yoga and introspective time, whatever resource that you take to spend an hour a week, right? That component, when you spend strategic multiple hours in a week focus, can really turn things around a lot faster. And being able to turn this around allows you to be able to enjoy those playtimes with your kid, and to do that strategically. Teach your child in a way that they learn, and the way that you'll learn, which is through play. Highly sensitive children learn through play much more effectively than through conversations that you've been having over and over and over again. Just like you've been having conversations with yourself over and over and over again on how you can change how you're responding to your kid, and that hasn't worked. And so we need to make sure that pattern is changing in the whole family dynamic. And then we got to focus on being strategic, right? We can't just focus on every single thing that your kid is doing that's not getting their needs met or isn't helpfully contributing to the family dynamic. You have to focus on one at a time, and that requires patience. When we work with the parents that we work with, right, dealing with this problem for 6, 7, 8 years before they get to us, it can be incredibly difficult to wait just 4 weeks, right? And yet it's still relevant. You still need to wait to watch your child respond, and to learn all the skills in a strategic way. Because getting all the skills and trying to apply them willy-nilly isn't going to work either. So you need to be able to strategically implement change with your child in a way that doesn't berate them. And I'm saying that specifically. Go ahead, Neil. You want to?
Yeah, Megan. There is something else here to be said, because one of the signs of when people have been focusing on symptoms for a long time is that then the reflex becomes to look for quick fixes.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about the work on root causes is that it actually happens pretty fast, but it doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
And so part of the journey here is learn to do what works, and then sticking to what works. for a sufficient amount of time. When we
Right.
plant crops, they don't come up the next day.
Right.
It takes a few weeks
Yeah.
of doing the right thing, preparing the soil in the right way, putting the water down and doing it again and again and again. And for several days, you don't see anything happening. And that's totally normal, right?
Yeah.
That's how you know that the process of growth happened. But when we have spent a lot of time kind of following oh my God, I'm feeling so stressed, I just need to fix this right now. Let me give something that will create some instant relief. We lose the ability to see what is the pattern of actually development and growth. And so that's one of the other things that, as you speak about this pillar, we work on right away as people work here in the program.
Exactly. And you also need accountability and support from a rock star mindset coach like you to make sure that you're not digging the seeds up to see if they're growing. All right. Like, when we think about, you can go parents can listen to us and be like, okay, I'm going to playfully talk to my kid.
Exactly.
About keeping their hands to themselves, right? Because hitting their sibling immediately leads to sibling screaming, which then immediately leads to feelings of the child thinking that they're a bad kid, which then immediately leads to a meltdown. So you know what? If I can get my kid to stop hitting, then I can absolutely get my kid to stop melting down, right? It seems like it makes sense in the sense that, focusing on the hitting behavior could feel like the catalyst, right? Like the tipping point. But in fact, that snowball started much higher up the hill. And I know I always mix my metaphors, so hopefully people are following me. But what we're addressing here is noticing that when you have that playful conversation with your kid, it's not as simple as just having that conversation and then noticing that a day later your kid's going to hit again, and then asking them, well, wait a minute, didn't you understand this? Are you sure you're going to, do you promise? Do you understand? Do you get it? Because what you're doing in that experience is you're digging up those plants. Did I plant it right? Am I, are you sure you have the right soil? Did I put the right seeds in? Did I water enough? Are you still wet? And it's incredibly tedious to just try to plant seeds with like the ones we did when we were in grade school or whatever. And I don't know, I'm guessing they had those in Italy too. Like the little gardens we had when we were little, like just the examples, right? Or the plastic solo cups we did in kindergarten, right? That's not how you grow a garden. That's how you practice growing a garden. And so when we're thinking about actually growing the garden of your child's skill set and supporting your whole family and building those skills, it requires a lot more understanding of the problem than just looking at the behavior you want to see change. That is not the problem. And being able to turn that around requires parents to know that asking your kid if they understand your rules and if they understand what they're supposed to do and drilling it into them and even practicing with them multiple times isn't where your child needs to be focused. Your child needs to be focused on feeling like you understand them. And that requires you to first get out of the way. And really look at how your child ticks, which, we already discussed. The brain of a highly sensitive person works differently than the brain of a non-highly sensitive person. There's been countless research on brain scans of highly sensitive people and how there is much more brain activity going on in a highly sensitive person than in a non-highly sensitive person when it comes to experiencing empathy, when it comes to experiencing and contemplating deep thoughts or complicated topics, as well as just in general. And so when we look at that data and understand it on a deeper level of taking that information and then applying it to particular parenting tactics to support children, the component of noticing what to prioritize first is really, really critical. And so once families get that advice for us, because that is child specific, and it's incredibly important to look at each kid uniquely, that's where they feel like they are making that headway, right? Because having that clarity of what to prioritize is very important when you are stuck sinking without a boat, right? You need to learn how to get into the boat first before you start paddling, heading towards your destination, right? If your objective is to get out of the ocean and onto the island, onto land, and you're sinking and then you're given a boat, you shouldn't grab on the side of it and start kicking because your end goal is to get to the to the water quickly, right? Get to the land quickly. It should be getting in the boat, using the paddle that happens to be in the boat, right? So there's steps that need to be taken specifically in breaking out of this pattern, that when you miss them, it just becomes an inefficient cycle.
Totally. And specificity of each child, I think it's a very important topic here. And like you mentioned, it's like, yes, we are planting these beautiful seeds, but we are planting them in soils that have different compositions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if we don't take that into account, but we just know, but well, I saw that these are the seeds, this is the amount of water. Well, but it's very different depending on what's the temperature and what's the climate like. And that is very different if you have a child that is 4-year-old or 6-year-old or 8-year-old or 10-year-old or a teenager. Very different shape and very different amount of water will be needed, and different emphasis to different parts of the program. So this is the beauty and the depth of this work, is that it's not a one size fits all. There is a system here, but there is also the appreciation of how we are different and we have different needs.
Yes. And in noticing that the meltdown isn't the only behavior that the child and the families are able to impact, is important, because when children or teens are shutting down, in addition to melting down or hitting and engaging in aggressive behavior, or even as devastating as listening to your kids say that life would be better off without them, there's a lot of despair in that experience, a lot of grief the parents need to work through. And in order to cultivate hope that things are going to be different, you need a strategy, because hope just keeps you floating, right? And justifying that it'll all work out. And without a strategy, you can't get solutions out of hope, right? It's like squeezing water out of a stone. And so when we think about the experience of what helps build stamina for parents in this experience, the understanding that they are coming at a strategy that they might have tried with less context before is also important. Nicolo, you have the fantastic role of helping the parents who yes but me. Right. And so I'd love to, and endearingly so, right? We work with phenomenal clients who have tried to solve this problem for so long, right? And so when we give them advice to just to do, specifically related to the strategy advice on what to do and how to say something to their kid, if all they hear is the what to do, they shut down from that, right? Then that component needs to be addressed as well, right? Because the how to solve the problem is much more important than the what you're doing, and that's where all those missing links get stuck. Okay, so how do we know what we do is going to work for anybody listening, right? If you've been dealing with this problem, you've been trying to solve this problem in all kinds of different ways. You say, Megan, you know what? Actually, I do play with my kid. I do try to help my kid hear from me that I understand them. I do tell them that everything's going to be all right, and that I'm here to support them. And I do try to look at things in perspective and focus on only, specific behaviors that I see from my kid. And yet here I am still dealing with these daily meltdowns. then the conversation needs to be on whether or not we can help you, right? Because we don't know if we can help parents without having a conversation with them. The first and foremost important piece of what we do at MTC is that we only work with people whom we know that we can help. And that requires us to have a conversation with you. In order to do that, you need to book a call with our team. We go to meganthompsoncoaching.com/talk. You're going to get on the phone with one of our coaches. Coaches are going to assess whether or not you guys are stuck with a problem that we solve. And we'll help you get that clarity and break through that clarity into really systematically knowing exactly what it's going to take to turn the problem around and to get to the solution that you've been looking for your particular family. Not just specifically breaking out of the meltdown cycle, but living your family's dreams. What is it that you really want for your family? We started the conversation talking about the fear that you experience and the dread and the guilt that you experience when your brain says, I shouldn't have become a mother, or I can't believe we had kids, or life was so much easier when it was just me and my spouse. And that gut punch that you experience is just one piece of the puzzle, right? And so, of course, eliminating that experience and that judgment that you're having in any given situation is of course part of the solution. But then the next question becomes, what do you get to think about? What amazing thoughts do you want to have consistently in your home? What amazing experiences do you want to have consistently with your family and witness your children doing, right? We don't stop there. We don't just stop at getting rid of the bad, the unpleasant and the difficult. We focus on being able to create that life full of joy and peace and emotional freedom in the whole household. And that requires a conversation with a skilled expert who can identify where you're stuck with you, and then identify what specific strategy is going to work. And if that's what we do, our strategy is just outlined here, then we'll have that conversation with you directly on that phone. You can jump into fixing it immediately. And if that strategy is not what is going to be most appropriate, then our team will point you in the right direction, tell you exactly what professionals to seek out, or what particular resources you need to be highlighting first before we would be a fit, if that's part of your family's journey. All right, guys, we are happy to have that conversation with you. Can't wait to talk to you again. And Nicolo, thanks for joining me. And
Wonderful. Well, to be here and to connect with you all.
All right.